I wish it had turned crazy and that cop got in his behind whooped. And it was like, okay, I told you to back up, but we know that's not going to happen because they're just going to, uh, they're not going to let that happen. But what do you do? Is the code always um, enforced? I mean, is the code like even if one officer knows the other officer's wrong, is the code like you got to back that officer up anyway, just by virtue of the fact that he's an officer, even if he's wrong, or is it like an all-in? Is like you clear the benches, even though you got a hothead player on the team, is it because it's the team you got to jump out there and help out, even if you know that your teammate was wrong, or will they ever run out there and just hold down the officer? I mean, is it ever a point where they pull the officer back, or is it always just let's hurry up and get the perpetrator, or who we believe to be the perpetrator, or whoever that officer is going after, let's lock them up first and then deal with the officer, and then go back and try to smooth things over?
Well, that's a good question. And normally what happens, let me give you a couple of scenarios. In this particular case, let's say that I'm the guy or girl, then they probably put out, once they started struggling, they put out something known as a Signal 13, and that's pretty much officer needs help call. So you're going to get officers responding from all over the city or all over the state or whatever the situation is. And now imagine you're the officer that's arriving and you see the officer struggling on the ground. You have no idea what has transpired. And, yes, absolutely. If I was the arriving officer and I didn't know anything other than when I got there, the officer was in the middle of the street struggling. Yep, I'm jumping in. I'm grabbing this guy's legs. So I'm doing everything I can do to help subdue this guy. And then after that, after he's subdued and everyone kind of dusts off a little bit, that's when the officers start talking to each other about, okay, what happened and so forth and so on, if it can be done and you don't have a big crowd and all that kind of stuff. Just I'm talking strictly safety now.
Right.
Now, the second scenario, of course, is what you saw happen with the other officer sitting in the car with him. He was sitting right there. He heard the whole thing. There's no way that guy can say, I didn't hear what was going on, because they both heard this guy say, why don't you get him off the ground? Because the sergeant was screaming back at him something to the effect of, why don't you mind your business? So he knew the guy was saying something. So he can't say he didn't say anything. But also he was sitting at an angle that he could see the guy wasn't a threat. The guy didn't attempt to hinder. He was not disorderly. And he walked away. He said his piece, and he was clearly walking away. So in that situation, see, this is where the whole courage piece is, kicks in. Whether you have enough sense. Now, if you're really looking out for your boy, you grab him by the collar and say, whoa, 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 where you going? And that's happened. Right. And see, that's the part of the thin blue line that people don't talk about. The thin blue line, contrary to what people say, is not a secret thing to hide bad stuff. The thin blue line refers to the support that police officers give each other, throughout the day and throughout the year, so that they can do their job and be safe and support each other. It's not a thing of, we're trying to hide evil stuff, because, officers are very proud of the job that they do, and they don't want anyone in the ranks that's going to make them look bad, or that's going to tarnish the reputation of their agency or the badge. 99% of them. So, but in that case, you're talking about the thin blue line, and it happens every day. Hey, whoa, man, where you going? What you doing? No, we're not doing that. You just pull your partner back, pull your sector buddy back, and just say, no, we'll get him another day, or let's focus on what we have. That's what should have happened there.
Right.
That's what should have happened, and it didn't. And now it's gonna cost the city.
Yeah.
It's gonna cost some careers probably. And look at the harm that it's done to the gentleman that was involved.
Right. I mean, and the city's got enough trouble. To be and this dude was getting paid on top of it. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with what was going on. But I didn't know Sergeant made that much money. He was making more money than the mayor.
Well, yeah, he was working. He was killing the overtime, and and there's nothing wrong with the officers working overtime. I mean, if it's offered and you're eligible, there's no reason. As long as you are not working it to the point where you can't work your primary post or your primary shift.
Right.
But when it's offered, if you are eligible and it's sanctioned by the department, and most importantly, you are doing the job that the overtime assignment requires. You're not just soaking up $100 an hour and you're just sitting around with your feet up. If it's to quell narcotics or it's to look for burglars or it's a community event, you have to, of course, perform that duty. But if it's offered, right, that's what it's there for. And he obviously took advantage of it. But I guarantee you they're going to look at that too. They're going to look at his overtime assignments and compare that to his productivity to see if there were some other things going on there as well. So he's pretty much opened up a Pandora's box, because they're going to look at every single thing, because if the city doesn't, you can certainly believe that this young man's attorney is going to do that. And the lawyers are lined up at the door to talk to this guy, unfortunately.
That's right. Yeah, he ain't the one I want doing overtime. I'll tell you that. If it's offered now, let's get him later on. Let's not let this is the last dude you want out there more than 40 hours a week, gaffling folk.
And the irony also, Thin Bad, is that the city of Baltimore is also under a consent decree from the Department of Justice. Right. So as part of that consent decree process, they look at the use of force, documentation, training, just a lot of different things that a supervisor or a slick sleeve or a command level officer, should do. So that is a big thing that they should be looking at right now. Because think about this, Thin Bad. Let's look at this again. So you have a supervisor, a sergeant, with 24 years on, with a body camera on an agency that is under DOJ consent oversight because of improper use of force allegations. So what that says is that among some officers, and again, you can't paint all the officers with a broad brush, that's not fair, but among some officers, there is still a culture of, we're going to do what we're going to do. The hell with what the rest of the community desires, or what the Department of Justice is saying, or what the rules say, or what the laws of the state of Maryland say, or what the laws of the federal government say.
Right.
I'm just going to do it my way. And, oh, by the way, don't ever, and he said it to the other guy, don't you ever tell me how to do police work. So that's that guy's attitude.
Right.
And the other thing is, I certainly hope that his attitude has not permeated that squad and poisoned his subordinates. Now, certainly when you see the sergeant being charged and he's done as a police officer, hopefully that'll change some minds. But you just hope that has not occurred as well.
Right. Yeah. And then you go, it's just, I just can't, imagine, you're right. Because what can happen now, he opens up the Pandora's box for everything else. So now they'll look at everything with a fine-tooth comb, which is good for citizens, but some of his, not too good for people who are making use of overtime. Maybe they'll find, that he worked too much overtime. His fuse was too short. Maybe he didn't have enough rest. I don't know what they'll find, but I hope I'm glad they found him guilty of what they found him guilty of. But I can't help but keep going back in my head to, if a guy's been on the force for 24 years, if he's, done this, if he did it this time with a camera on, and it just calls into question every other arrest he's made in my mind. He's just gotten too comfortable. And not to say that, some of the arrests, obviously, not every arrest is a problem, but I'm like, if you had this mentality coming in, or did something happen? I mean, did he used to be an exemplary cop that just, snapped? Did he get complacent? And at the end of the day, I guess none of that really matters. Um, but you multiply him times however many. Again, like I'm saying, there are a lot, of officers who do the right thing. And yeah, I would think this whole blue, what was it?
The thin blue line.
The thin blue line thing. After a while, I would like, yo, wait a minute. You bad apples are messing up, the integrity of the whole department. And you're making it rougher for all of us who go out in the street and have to try to let the community know, hey, we mean you no harm. But they make it difficult. These bad apples make it really difficult. I would like to see the whole. You talk about no snitching in the street. There's like no snitching in the force either. I mean, it's just like,
Sure.
just wait a minute. So, I'd love to see them try to, go in reverse, like all the good cops with the integrity, with all of that, the ones who are like, hey, wait a minute, like, let's get this in order. You all are messing it up for all of us. But they've got some cousins, it looks like, and I guess we can talk about that when we come back from the break. If it's time for the break. Is it time for the break yet? We're coming up on it?
Yeah, we're coming up on it. And,
Right.
one of the things that I just wanted to comment on very quickly before we do that is, our friend Phil, who is always sending us great comments, sort of reminded me of Serpico in New York City. And, Serpico was fighting that whole atmosphere of corruption in his precinct. And, before he passed, I had the opportunity to talk to Chief Commissioner Murphy about that whole Serpico piece. And, he was talking about, how that attitude was very pervasive. It was just, if you were that younger officer, you learned certain things, and there was a pecking order in terms of who could participate in certain things, get certain overtime, get certain other types of perks, if you will. And you see that was an atmosphere of corruption. You look at the Rampart scandal in LAPD. The same thing. You just had all kinds of egregious conduct and things that shouldn't have been occurring. But again, when
Right.
you
Right.
but again, you just got to keep circling back. The thousands of other officers who were not participating in that, it was like, wow, man, now we have to work extra hard to let people know that, I'm not a crook. I'm out here every day
Right.
trying to do my thing and try to make it better. But look at these knuckleheads, and that's
Right.
the real challenge that you have,
Right. And that's the point. It's like, this is, it just makes it more dangerous, more difficult for everyone else. The community suspect, the other officers have to go above and beyond and work twice as hard to make sure that, the folks know, what the deal is, that everybody's not like that, and that they're on their side. So it's an uphill
It is indeed.
battle.
It
Battle.
absolutely
No one's suggesting that. Yeah. So
it absolutely is, and you're right. When we get back from the break, of course, we'll talk about another couple of incidents that have happened throughout the country. Of course, we've been following very closely what's been going on in Phoenix, and the chief there just was in the middle of a community meeting on yesterday, and so that has created quite a stir in the community in Phoenix. So keep it locked. We'll be right back, and let's talk about what's going on in Phoenix.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Real talk, straight, no chaser. We'll be right back.